Jeff, you and I have talked before about certain professional wrestlers and how overrated I believe they are, notably Ric Flair. But in all actuality, I feel like the most overrated wrestler in the history of professional wrestling is the quote unquote icon Sting. Considered a legend in a lot of circles, considered an icon in a lot of circles, but yet, when he had his chance to step up to the occasion and lead a company, he showed up out of shape. They changed the booking. Um, it's one of the biggest debacles in the history of professional wrestling at Starrcade 1997. And now he comes into TNA at Final Resolution 2006. He makes his quote unquote re debut there after having like four appearances the year before. And we had seen every pay per view we had seen had an outstanding main event, and now we come into this pay per view, and it's a very very mediocre tag match, the worst pay per view main event we've seen so far, and I would say probably the worst at least since 2004 for them.
Well, what was missing from this that was in the last three?
Rhino.
Rhino. I was just going to say that. He's the one person that was missing from this. And when you look at the match he had earlier on in the card, he was amazing.
Hmm.
I would have rather seen that Rhino Abyss match as the main event than this, to be honest. Because
Yeah,
I thought that was a really well done, very short match, but really well done.
absolutely. And it's kind of funny that we had talked about last time around, not last week because we kind of took a mental health week last week.
Yeah,
But the week before that, I had said, I'm looking forward to seeing how, I'm disappointed that Rhino didn't, has still have the world championship, but I was glad that they at least set up something for him going forward. And that's something they set up was him feuding against Team Canada, but instead of feuding against Team Canada, Scott D'Amore hired Abyss to try to take out Rhino for them.
right.
So I wonder if we're ever going to actually see Rhino versus Team Canada.
I don't know. I was under the impression that Team Canada actually dissipates soon.
Yeah, I don't know exactly when that happens. I mean, I know it's not too long from now, but I don't know exactly when. And I mean, like you mentioned, Bobby Roode is already kind of straying from the flock anyway.
Yeah, and the abuse to Eric Young and all this stuff. It's interesting. I'm just curious when they're finally going to. It looks like well, here, I just pulled it up. Disband on the June 29th episode of Impact
In 2006.
in 2006.
Okay, so we're like five
So,
months away from that.
right, yeah. So Team Canada, Jim Cornette announced that Team Canada was disbanded. He later allowed them an all or nothing 8-man tag match on the July 13th episode against Rhino, Team 3D, and Jay Lethal. If they lost, they had to disband.
Interesting. Okay.
So at least in six
Rhino,
months,
Team 3D, and Jay Lethal.
and Jay Lethal. Well, you got to have somebody that's on the equal playing level of Eric Young.
I suppose, but it sounds like even then they were looking for a way to elevate Black
Jay
Machismo.
Lethal. Well, this was before Black Machismo. I mean that happened in like 2009 when Hogan and actually it wasn't 2009 or was it 2010 when
Was it that
Hogan
long
and
ago?
Bischoff.
Really?
Yeah, when Hogan and Bischoff came in.
Okay.
He really started doing all the impersonations when they came in. Then he was the mini Flair for a week and a half. Still gave one of the best promos I've ever seen. Watching him and Flair
Still better
woo
than
each
Flair.
other.
Excuse me. Oh.
Watching him and Flair woo each other was still one of my favorite moments.
Yeah.
But then right after he started impersonating Flair, he quickly went on to the Black Machismo. But that was after Hogan, Flair, and Bischoff all came in. So we're talking 2011ish, 10, 11.
If you're hearing the sound of prancing feet in the background, it's because my puppy woke up and decided he wants to play right when we were starting our show. So I'm trying to
Yeah.
play tug with him at the same time as I'm talking to you.
If you're hearing the sounds of somebody talking through water, I'm sorry, that's me. I still cannot figure out my stupid settings on YouTube.
Yeah, Jeff likes to pretend he's Aquaman. So
Just the Jason Momoa one. It's just me flexing over here.
well,
So
the other good part about being the Jason Momoa one is you also had some sex scenes with Khaleesi during that first year of Game of Thrones. So
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a very good point. One thing that I do need to say is, we've been talking back in January, February, March. We kind of did our way too early wrestlers of the year, and Osprey was there. Now we're 3 months. We haven't seen, well, I guess not even 2 months since we've really seen Osprey wrestle, but we've been watching a lot of other wrestling. So we're kind of throwing into the ring other performances that we've seen. And, Osprey is still right up there. He may still be my number one. I don't know. I'd have to, give it some thought. Roddy Strong, Eddie Edwards are in that mix. Roddy Strong is making a severe run for that top notch. And then, who else do we have? Was it Davey Richards?
Michael Elgin, Davey Richards.
Michael Elgin. It was Michael Elgin for me. So I mean, we're looking at the top four now being in any order. It being Eddie Edwards, Davey Richard, or Eddie Edwards, Michael Elgin, Roddy Strong, Will Ospreay. And after watching this last four events, including this one, AJ Styles is in my top five.
Rager, I'm going to say the same thing to you that I say to Jeff every week. No matter how much you try to hump my leg, I'll still be more dominant than you. So,
I don't care. I mean, as long as I get off, what do I care?
okay. Yeah. You know, we you know we talk about AJ Styles every week we're doing this. We talk about him most weeks, regardless of whether he's on the show or not. but
Right. Yeah.
but I thought he was great in this match. I wouldn't say this match itself was 5 stars, just because I don't think Tanahashi was to that level yet.
No, but
I
this was
think,
a solid.
but I think Styles, and he got the opportunity here to play on the back foot, to be chasing during the entire match almost, and then to show how great he is at selling too.
And to showcase Tanahashi here in a spot before he became the ace. We're about 3-4 years early for him. And then not too far from now, he becomes the best wrestler in New Japan and becomes the face of the company for years. So it's
How crazy is it that we're in a time now where, as New Japan Pro Wrestling fans, we can still watch the two greatest wrestlers in the history of the company wrestle.
right, exactly.
You could say Inoki if you want to, and I wouldn't crucify you for throwing Inoki or Chono in there, but I mean really, when you look at business wise and what they've done for the company and what they've done without politics for the company, I think it's Tanahashi and Okada.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. But it was nice. I mean, this wasn't his 5-star match that he's put on the 3 pay-per-views before, but this was a solid 4.5. Still one of the best matches. I think probably one of the best matches on this card. Samoa Joe versus CD gave it a run, but AJ just we every single time I see him on especially back here in 2005 and 6, is just flat out amazing.
Is there? You mentioned CD versus Samoa Joe, so I'm just going to say this: that match had the most ridiculous ending to it.
Oh, it was terrible.
AJ was not the corner man for Christopher Daniels, and it wasn't even Christopher Daniels' goddamn towel. So,
Right.
it should not have been allowed, in for two different reasons.
The the endings of
But the referee should have used his discretion to stop the match, in my opinion. But I realize that I do know they're using it to set up another triple threat between the two that's coming up, I think, in the next show. But and kind of like have Daniels have some resentment towards AJ and all that kind of bad blood. But I mean, really, it was a ridiculous way to do it. I think
well, it was back to
it was
back
probably
bad
Sting's
endings.
idea.
It was back to back bad endings. I mean, we had that tag match had one of the worst endings I've ever seen.
Yeah,
And then they follow it up with this ending where I get it, the drama, the build, they're trying to build towards something else, but there too, it, it it's kind of the same thing when Cody came down and everyone's ragging on him for not letting QT throw in the towel. Well, neither one of them were his corner man. So why are they allowed to throw in the towel?
yeah.
I mean, I guess,
It would have made more sense in that case, I think, just because QT is his regular tag partner, Cody's his brother, but AJ and Daniels were fierce rivals at that point.
yeah, who only started really being on the same page because of Samoa Joe being an asshole.
Right.
So that ending, I was there too. I was like, why is that? I get it. I get the whole throwing the towel, he's saving Christopher Daniels and all this stuff. But at the same time, I was like, what's to stop anybody from coming down in the middle of in the middle of a match and throwing in the towel for one of their rivals?
Yeah, that's very
You know,
true.
it's one of those logic things. And that ending of AMW versus Team 3D is one of the most embarrassing things I think I've ever seen.
Oh, come on, that was fantastic. I love that match.
Well, come on. I mean, the fact that he couldn't go to couldn't ask anybody around there, the ringside officials, anybody. He couldn't go to the video and see that he actually counted Team 3D. He just all of a sudden goes, "Oh, Chris Harris is there. Well, AMW must have won this, so we're gonna let them continue to be champions."
There's no video replay in pro wrestling, Jeff.
But oh yeah, you say that, and then 30 seconds later they show the replay of it.
Right, but I mean, there's no like referee call based on instant replay.
No, but you could have. I mean, and I don't know what TNA did the next night. I don't know. I don't remember how they handled this situation. But my guess is now you've got them coming out and leaving the titles in holding up the titles or keeping AMW as the champions when clearly they were defeated.
No, they weren't. The referee counted down the shoulders above Beret.
The referee counted down the shoulders, but he didn't see who he did until 10 minutes later after they got hit in the face with a guitar or sticks or whatever. I don't know.
No,
It was
no,
just it was just a
it
bad
was a
ending.
silly ending, but I don't think it was as bad as the towel thing.
I I
And
I do. I thought it was terrible.
we saw something similar to this too in WCW, like Super Brawl 2 or something, where it was Anderson and Eaton defending the tag titles against the Steiners, and the referee um, got salt thrown in his eyes or something, and or no, that's what I'm sorry, it was the other way around. Rick Steiner got salt thrown in his eyes, and he ended up doing a belly belly suplex to the referee instead of to one of the Anderson or Eaton, one of the Dangerous Alliance. So
Right.
I don't know. I guess
I
I guess it was a completely different ending, but I mean, I liked it, so I can understand
I
why you
mean,
didn't, but I thought it was creative.
like if they had come in, okay, the referee's got salt thrown in his eyes. We see the ref bump. He's down all the time. You get the face gets the cover. He's about to have the referee count, and then someone comes in and flips him over or hits him and covers him with something else, and then the referee counts. That ending makes sense. I'm okay with that. But to actually count the shoulders down, and then when you can see 5 minutes later, I go, oh, okay, well, I guess, they've been laying there for 5 minutes. So I might as well just say that it was these guys who won it, even though 3D's music played after their victory and before Team Canada came down. There were so many things wrong with it that it
Jeff,
was
the
like
the referee was not a music connoisseur. Okay, he just
he
wasn't.
didn't have he didn't have ears. He didn't have 30,000 people, well, probably 10,000 people screaming at him that he made the wrong call. I don't know. It
I
was
think
just
it's more problematic that he counted that he couldn't see, and yet he could see enough to see that somebody's shoulders were down for a three.
right. Exactly. There's that too. There was just a lot wrong with it. Just a lot wrong with it. The pay per view itself wasn't bad. Um, I was really happy to see not Team Canada versus Three Live Crew again. So that made me happy.
Yeah, but it was weird that there was that kind of that buffer match with the Diamonds in the Rough rather than actually having um, the New Age Outlaws taking on
LAX.
LAX. Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of an odd spot. And then, the Bobby Roode versus Ron Killings feud was kind of odd too. It was almost kind of just thrown together there. Um, the ending Conan was nice. I didn't realize that
Will
Homicide.
you tell Jacob to stop barking in the background?
Sorry about that. Um, I didn't realize that Apollo was the original member of LAX before Hernandez came in.
I know what I did know that, but I had forgotten about
I maybe that's it. Maybe I just forgot about it. But it was odd to see Apollo as part of LAX.
Yeah, it was. I had, mostly because I had forgotten about it, and I think they kind of like just play it off that Apollo didn't cut the mustard or something. I can't remember exactly, but uh, wow. Okay.
Oh, okay. So, I'm sorry. I'm just kind of.
No, that's okay. Um,
So there was a guy named Machete that was part of it too.
I forgot about that guy too.
Introduced Apollo's. His departure was explained. Apollo was fired for no showing an event. His departure was explained on screen by Conan, who simply stated that LEX was expanding, then introduced Apollo's replacement, the debuting Machete. Homicide and Machete went on to lose to the James Gang, and then on an episode of Impact, Machete lost to Shark Boy. Afterward, Conan inadvertently hit Machete with a slapjack, then tore off the Puerto Rican T-shirt and threw him out of the stable. And the next week, Hernandez was introduced.
Okay. Um, Speaking of the James Gang, I like that name a lot better than I like Voodoo Kin Mafia. So
Yeah,
I would, and James King, really does kind of play to their. I mean, their last names are both James, in this gimmick, obviously, but also
the New Age
The
Outlaws.
James King was a famous outlaw gang, and so it kind of plays off their old history of being New Age outlaws. So
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, it was nice seeing them together again. They did a lot of the same stuff. I don't know what Billy's new tagline is. I don't like it. I want it to go back to "suck it."
Wasn't it
Um,
get it got it good?
yeah,
Yeah,
he had three words for you, not two words. He had three words, or
but,
get it, got it, good.
and that's actually
It's like
5 words, by the way.
it
I
was.
know he did say 3 words, but it's actually five.
I was just I was yeah, that was like I heard that and I'm like I hope that tagline never comes back again ever. Period. I don't want to hear
You know
it.
what match was surprisingly good on here?
Which one?
Sean Waltman versus Raven.
Well, I mean, it is Raven,
Yeah, that's true.
and Waltman is a very underrated worker.
I guess I thought during this time though he wouldn't have been very good at this. I mean, because we're talking about I don't know 13 years after I first saw him wrestle, and when he kind of like has been like worn down by drugs and sex videotapes with China, and you know
Did that happen before this? I thought that happened after this.
I think it
I
was
thought that
before that. But I mean, if it wasn't fine, but yeah, I thought this was a really good match. Just Larry Zbyszko sucked in it as he sucked in everything I've ever seen him do. But
right, yeah, he should not be an on-screen character. I mean, he was a decent enough wrestler back in the day, but he should not have been a well, he was still working pretty solid. He was an actual roster member of TNA from '02 to '06, but he was still doing independent stuff too.
okay. Um, but Zabisco in this match was just, I mean, he was trying to like pretend like he was being impartial, but yet he just held Raven on top of the ladder, so he couldn't do anything, so he couldn't suplex Waltman off there too.
Right,
And then of course he looked up and saw the foot on the ropes, and then he still counted the three,
right.
which was pretty clear. I don't know. I don't know how they resolve this on the following Saturday if they do, but I thought the match was really good. I just I hated Zabisco's involvement in
Yeah, that was another screwy ending that was easily reverted by just management looking at the tape. Um, but you were right; it was '04 that he had his sex tape with China.
There you go. Um,
So
yeah, so I mean, I'm gonna say that this was a good show, but it was nowhere near as good as the other three that we've seen, and I
yeah,
blame Sting for that.
I I blame Sting for taking down the main event. I thought Monty Brown, Jeff Jarrett, and even Christian Cage looked a lot better in this one than he did in the last one. But you're right. I think Sting was off, really, really off. Uh, Samoa Joe, CD put on a great match. The ending was just terrible. Same thing with the tag title match. Abyss Rhino was a great match. AJ versus Tanahashi might have been the best match on the night. Waltman Raven was decent. I couldn't get into the James Gang versus Diamonds in the Rough. I don't know why. I tried, even with nostalgia on my side, I just couldn't get into it. And of course, it's always nice to see Sabin, Strong, Aries, and Shelley in the ring.
Um, I agree with about the James Gang versus Diamonds the Rough match. I couldn't get into it either, but I think the reason for it is because it was so weirdly placed. Like all of a sudden the James Gang, they had this hot thing going on with Conan, and yet Conan isn't even involved in that match. It's just them against the Diamonds in the Rough. And I thought
Yeah,
I thought it was just so weirdly done that there was nothing to get into.
well, yeah, they were in a really hot thing against Conan and LAX. Plus, they still had their feud with Team Canada that was never really put to bed. Um, so it could have been them against Eric Young and Petey Williams, who were in the pre-show. LAX, Homicide, and Conan, they were in the pre-show. So it was just weird. It was really just that match and the Bobby Roode versus Ron Killings. I guess that kind of made sense because it was a rollover from their original feud. This is one of those pay-per-views too where they never really let anything breathe. The longest match on the entire night was Cage versus that main event. Cage and Sting versus Jarrett Monty. It was 15 minutes and 35 seconds.
Yeah, that's just not very long.
No, and then Samoa Joe was and CD was right behind it at 15 minutes and 30 seconds. Nothing else got higher than 12.
Yeah, they just had too many matches on this card. They tried to get too many people on the show. I think they had
Yep,
nine matches on this card, and so they had this space. So and then of course there's the backstage stuff and all that stuff. So
and there was the tag matches. It was already a 4-hour card. Without it was classic early 2000s booking where you have to get everybody and their mother on the show. You don't let anybody have any time to shine. This was kind of what you would expect out of a regular TV show. 10, 11-minute matches.
right, exactly. Um, anything else on this one?
Not really, no. I mean, I enjoyed it for the nostalgia. AJ was and Tanahashi. It was really nice to see Tanahashi that green. And AJ looked so good against him, and I like the Joe Daniels rivalry. The rest of it had hits and misses. Abyss and Rhino was also amazing, I guess, but the rest of it kind of had hits and misses and things that I didn't care too much for. So I'm a little bit down on this one.
Gotcha. Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. So let me ask you something. Did it feel weird not watching him take over this weekend?
Not, yeah. I mean, there were a couple of times, especially. Uh, was it last night or Saturday night? I think it was last night, wasn't it?
Sunday night.
Sunday night. So okay, yeah, Sunday night. It did feel weird because there were a few times when I'd look over at Jacob, I'm like, "You want to turn that on?" And he'd be like, "Nah, nah, let's watch this movie instead." And then I took him. He has some night hours he has to get done, so we went for like a 2-hour drive
Hmm.
uh, to get that knocked in. But and then I read the results, and I'm happy I missed it. But there were a couple of times where I thought about it, like it's weird not watching NXT after all the time we put into it. But at the same point, I was like, I know what it's going to be. It's going to be more WWE storylines.
I thought I would ask because I legitimately didn't care. I mean, I didn't. I don't think I checked until like after we did our show last night just to see like what the results were. And I read that the main event between the three women between Rhea, Charlotte, and Io Shirai was must see. So I might actually like turn it on just to watch that particular match.
Yeah, I heard that was the
Even though I really don't like doing that. I mean, I really prefer to watch shows in their entirety. Because I think that every match on a show influences every other match on the show, just like we talked about last night with Final Battle 2011. Um,
right.
but at the same time, I mean, I'm not going to devote 3.5 hours to a takeover these days, and plus, it wasn't even what I would consider a takeover because there was actually 7 matches on the show,
Well, it wasn't a takeover. It was in your house.
well, it's takeover in your house,
Oh, is that it?
and to me, a takeover is 5 matches, takes about 2.5 3 hours to watch, so
Well,
and
they're starting to get a little loose with their booking. They're starting to turn it more WWE.
starting to, okay.
Well, on NXT, it's only been the last, I don't know, 6 months that they've been, well, whatever that Johnny Gargano turn was on Champa. Was that in
I would
February?
say the week before they moved to USA, they started being loose with their booking.
Okay, so about 10 months now.
Yeah, and
But
that to me is just not something I want to watch. So
it really took a turn though when Gargano made his heel turn when it made no sense just to get buy rates for the next pay-per-view.
yeah, that's
That's
fair.
when it
But I haven't been
that's
in.
when it kind of turned for me and I was like, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah, but you, I mean, and I understand why that would have been the turn for you, and that's probably like when I was like I can't do it anymore. But as you know, I've been slowly souring on them since I think, um, yeah, since
Since
since the takeover at Leicester's WrestleMania. So
Yeah, that's true. And you were kind of even you were the first one to talk about the booking when Pete Dunne laid in the middle of the ring and stared longingly at his attacker.
yes, and that was the very first one on USA, right? The first
Yep.
full one on USA, I think.
No, that was the first half one
Oh, it
on
was okay,
USA because it was when Roddy Strong beat him.
okay.
Or no, that was Roddy and Velveteen Dream. But
But you know how much I love Io Shirai. So I mean,
right,
so I mean to not watch her is kind of heartbreaking to me. But and now like, but I think I feel like I have to watch that match now that I know that she actually won the championship in that match. So
yeah, I mean, I feel that same way about certain people. Like I've always been a huge Randy Orton fan, so it's kind of heartbreaking to not watch his performances. But then again, he is so hit and miss in his performances. Sometimes when
he's not going to be hit and miss this coming Sunday, Jeff, because he's going to be in the greatest wrestling match ever.
I, I hate everybody that says that their last match was bad and they don't want to see this. Their last
I
match was the best of WrestleMania.
absolutely. It was the
I
best.
mean,
It was the best in like the last five WrestleManias.
the best, yeah, the best actual match. I mean, that Firefly Funhouse match was amazing, but as an actual match with the storytelling and everything, their their match at WrestleMania was easily the best of the night.
Yeah, I don't. I'm thinking that people that didn't like that, people that I know there's an overwhelming opinion of people that didn't like that match, but I'm thinking it's probably a lot of it is just that um
They
that
like the Undertaker Boneyard match much more, so they have absolutely no taste.
well, there's that, but I was gonna say it's like that mentality these days of everything's got to be quick, 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 quick. You know,
Yeah, and that was a
there
long.
was real storytelling involved in that match. So
And it was one of those where you never want to see. A lot of people don't like battle royals because all it is kicking and punching. And there was a long segment with this match where all there was kicking and punching. But these are two former best friends who imploded in a horrible, horrible way. Probably the worst I've ever seen two best friends implode. And we've seen it a lot throughout wrestling history. There was the attacks on Beth Phoenix and his kids, and it was they played it off perfectly with how personal it had been. So the punching and kicking and all that stuff made a lot more sense in this match than any other grudge match I've ever seen.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if you and I ever break up, it's gonna be just like this. You know.
No, I'm going my separate ways. We, I
Yeah,
fall down and bleed too easily, so there wouldn't be punching and kicking involved.
yeah. No, I just can't I just can't believe they have the gall to say this is gonna, that they're actually calling it like before it was even. They actually filmed it yesterday, from what I understand, or over the weekend, from what I understand. But
Who was calling it the greatest wrestling match ever?
no, that's how they're billing it. That's how they're billing it. The greatest wrestling match ever,
What?
or the greatest match ever, or something like that. That's how WWE is billing this match. Yes.
What is wrong with they set people up for failure
Hmm.
with stuff like that? God, that's annoying.
Yeah, I mean, especially since we already know that we both saw the greatest wrestling match ever in 2018 between Vampiro and Crazy Steve.
Oh, you had to bring that up.
Well, it's funny because I really believe that the greatest wrestling match ever took place in 2018. You don't,
Right.
but I mean, I delayed it just so I could say Crazy Steve and Vampiro when you knew I was talking about Okada versus Omega. So
I still have my I have my favorites, my favorite greatest matches of all time type stuff, but I that Okada Omega match was up there. Yeah, I'll definitely agree, but I had my issues with it that kept it down.
I know. Yeah, I'm talking about the 2 out of 3 falls match. You know.
Oh yeah, yeah, that one. Okay, I thought you were talking about the other one, the first one, the one that everyone called the greatest match ever.
No, I thought they got progressively better in their series, other than their G1 match. Even the G1 match is fantastic. But
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that 2 out of 3 falls match was amazing.
and
Wasn't
even
that 2019 though?
nope, it was 2018, 2019.
Oh yeah.
Kenny was in AEW the entire year.
Okay, you're right. Yeah, 2017 was when they had their first match that everyone called the greatest match ever.
Yep. They actually had three matches in 2017. They had the Wrestle Kingdom one, they had the Dominion one, then they had the G1 match.
And then he won it at was it Dominion
Yep.
2018?
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. Okay, yeah.
And
Now,
that is one of the greatest cards of all time, also because if you think about that, that also had that 5-star match between the Bucks and Lij, and it had that
yeah.
great Chris Jericho versus Naito match too.
Yep. Yeah, that was a good card. Wow.
Oh, and also it was Will Ospreay versus Hiromu in that card as well,
That was the first one where he beat Hiromo, right?
where Hiromu beat him, and then Hiromu like
I got injured right
got injured
after it.
his very
Yep.
first defense.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
All right.
um, and while we're talking about that, Ryan had asked me, when I had mentioned, and I think you said, I think we've talked about this before, and you said that yours is probably is one of the DYI versus Revival matches. But to me, the best tag team matches of all time we've seen in the last like 3 years. So, to me, because I thought that the Bucks versus Hangman Page and Omega was phenomenal, and then there was there was the Bucks against the Golden Lovers, and then right up there with that is the Golden Lovers versus Okada and Ishii.
Yeah.
So those are to me, and I realize that that might be some recency bias, but to me those are the three greatest tag team straight up tag team matches I've ever seen. So
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that. I Revival
you don't
DIY
think so,
had
Savannah?
the Revival DIY had a great one. Revival American Alpha had great ones. Um, we could probably go back in history and look at some of the Heart Foundation stuff, especially their match against Strikeforce.
Did they have a great match against Strikeforce?
Yeah, when they lost the titles.
Okay. I don't think I've ever actually seen that match.
That's the one where Santana where Tito got known for his hot tags.
Come here, Savannah. Savannah, come here. Sorry.
I'm trying to think through the 90s when a great tag match would have been.
1990 SummerSlam, Hearts versus Demolition for the tag titles, 2 out of 3 falls.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was a good one.
Um,
By the mid 90s, WWE kind of gave up on tag wrestling.
yeah.
It didn't come back again until like 90, 98, 99 with Edge and Christian and against the Hardys.
And see, here's the thing with those matches. Almost all of the great ones between those teams were either ladder
Ladder
matches or table
matches.
matches.
Yeah, they weren't straight up wrestling tag matches.
No, I would say probably in the 2000s, my favorite straight up tag match for the titles is Benoit Jericho against the two man power trip.
Yeah, that was a great match. But
The
even that,
one where Triple H blew out both his quads.
yeah, even that one, and then finish the match
Yeah,
because that's what he does.
yeah, that's what he and Vince McMahon both.
Well, no, Vince McMahon sits in the corner and just yells and fires people while sitting down.
uh,
Yeah,
that's just
that was
amazing that a guy and his father-in-law both had the same thing happen to them.
right. Yeah, in almost a similar, it it was almost a similar reason. I mean, didn't Triple H blow his as he was getting out of the ring, and Vince blew his as he was getting in?
I think that's correct. Yeah.
That's actually funny that happened. But yeah, I mean, it really was. It wasn't until probably the Motor City Machine Guns really made a comeback in after London and Kendrick kind of went their separate ways in what, 04, 05. It wasn't until Motor City Machine Guns in like 2010, 11 that there was tag team wrestling again. So there was a good 5 year stretch there where there wasn't. And even before then, it was spotty at best.
Wait, the Motor City Machine Guns were in WWE?
Not in WWE, they were in
Oh, okay. I thought we were
TNT.
talking about WWE era. That's why I was kind of surprised. So okay.
I mean, because London and Kendrick were probably about, well, I guess we can't say that because AMW and uh, Triple X were around.
Maybe that's what we should do. We were talking about doing a Mount Rushmore. So like, let's go 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s. What is
Oh,
your favorite tag match of any kind from each of those eras?
God, that's tough. The 80s is probably the toughest. And the one that sticks out the most is the Heart Foundation versus, no, because he was, I guess it wasn't, because didn't Brutus turn at WrestleMania 3, so the Dream Team was done?
Yes.
And Demolition didn't come in until the 90s.
Demolition came in '80s, late '87.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess if I had to say anything from the 90s or 80s that really, really stuck out, it would have been the Bulldogs versus the Islanders
And you're talking
at
about all.
WrestleMania when
Go ahead.
I'm talking about the 80s, just the 80s. I think the match that would have stuck out probably the most for me from the 80s would have been that Islanders versus the Bulldogs at WrestleMania when Matilda was on the line.
Um. Okay. But I was going to ask you. You're talking about any pro wrestling, or you're talking about just in WWF?
Oh, we're doing any?
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, then obviously it would be the Rockers against Road Warriors. Any match that they had in AWA, Rockers versus Road Warriors,
Wait, Road Warriors or Midnight Rockers? I mean Rock and Roll Express or Midnight Rockers?
Midnight Rockers.
Okay. All right. So, um, for me, it's probably the Andersons against um, the Rock and Roll Express in that steel cage match. Was Starcade '87 or '88?
That was another good match.
Yeah.
And the Midnight Rockers and anything that the Road Warriors did when they were up against Road Warriors was amazing. And then of course, you also had the Rock and Roll Express against Road Warriors too.
Right.
Was it 85 when Cornette blew his quad out, broke his leg off the ledge?
Oh yeah. Starcade '88, I want to say.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, I think when you're looking at 80s wrestling, WWE had the flashier names and the bigger stuff, but I think if you had wanted to look at actual real wrestling outside of, I still really like the Bulldogs versus Haku, but it doesn't, anything by the Midnight Rockers and Road Warriors was just nails.
I really liked. Speaking of the Bulldogs, I really liked their match against the Dream Team at WrestleMania 2.
WrestleMania 2. Yep. That was
That
the one I was actually thinking of. It wasn't the Heart Foundation because didn't the Heart Foundation who they
WrestleMania 2, the Hart Foundation were in that battle royal that Andre
yeah.
won.
And in WrestleMania 3, it was the Hart Foundation against somebody and when Danny Davis turned heel. Oh, against Strikeforce.
No, no. At WrestleMania 3 was Hart Foundation and Danny Davis against the British Bulldogs and Tito Santana.
Okay. All right. So I guess I don't remember which one it was where the British Bulldogs and wrestled against um, the Islanders, but that was a great match too.
An honorable mention for a tag team match of the '80s was when it's also WrestleMania 3 when King Kong Bundy and two midgets faced off against actually Hillbilly Jim and two midgets, and the midgets on Hillbilly's team got squashed by King Kong Bundy because anytime a midget gets squashed by a King Kong Bundy, I'm happy.
Makes you happy. I get it. I get it. I totally get it. All right, so I mean, I guess I can't pick from the '80s. I can't. There's not one match that stands out above the rest, but you could literally say anything that the Rockers did with the Road Warriors, Midnight Rockers, and the Road Warriors did in AWA.
In the '90s, I'm gonna go with that Heart Foundation versus Demolition match. I love that match so much from SummerSlam 1990. It does so it's great commentary by the teams. It's great chicanery by Demolition. Um, it's the Hearts. Um, yeah,
That was when Crush debuted, wasn't it?
he hadn't it wasn't when he debuted, but that but he was involved in losing the titles.
Okay.
And as I say, it was stupidity by Crush. LOD comes down to set up a great feud between the LOD and Demolition later on. So I mean, I really love that match.
I have two that really kind of jump out at me from the 90s, and both of them are from the late 90s. Well, I guess one's from the mid 90s, 97 ish. Um, Chainsaw Charlie and Cactus Jack versus New Age Outlaws in the dumpster match.
Okay.
That to me might have been my favorite tag match of the 90s. It was just, I was so into the New Age Outlaws. The fact that they weren't DX yet, but they were trying to be DX, and they had just gotten off that feud where they were lucky against, LOD. And then to see uh, Terry Funk out there waving around a chainsaw and wearing saran wrap around his face, there was just something entertaining about that. So I mean that match might have been my favorite, but a real close second is the Hardys versus Edge and Christian, the Brood versus the New Brood. When they did their Terry that ladder match at the last match of the Terry Invitational.
That was like late 1999, wasn't it? Yeah, so it does make the
Yep,
90s just barely, but it makes it there.
barely,
Like
but
October
yeah.
of 1999. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So
I think
it's a great
those
call. It's a great
two
call.
those two might be my two favorite of the 90s.
I'm not mad at that at all.
And you can't be mad at Demolition versus Heart Foundation. I mean, that's just greatness.
It is. It's really a great match. A very underrated match nobody ever talks about, but I think it's a great one. Um, so 2000s, you're up.
There's only one match from 2000s, and I'm curious if you're gonna get it. So I kind of want to let you go first. There literally is only one match from the 2000s,
Really? Okay. I'm trying to think.
and any other match you think of is wrong.
Well, that's great.
It's just
Ah, that's funny. Any other match I think of is wrong. Okay. Um,
pretty much, yeah. Because
Gauntlet Throne.
when you look at the 2000s, well, I guess you can't really say that because you could go with any of the ENC Dudley Hardy Boys matches, any of those WrestleMania TLC matches, because all that happened in the early 2000s. So I guess there might be some. I wouldn't argue against anybody that went with any of those.
I'm gonna go America's Most Wanted versus Triple X in Six Sides of Steel.
Yep, that was the match. that was that was the match I was saying. I don't know.
That was the match that I argued with Random Guy Number Five, who I used to do a show with, very briefly, but we were also writing partners as well.
Right.
And I said it was the match of the year in 2004, and he said no, it's the gimmick indie match of the year in 2004. And
Ugh,
I was like that's such a bullshit thing to say. It was better than any other thing in 2004. It was even
it
better.
might have been better than
It was even better than Benoit versus Triple H versus Michaels at the time. You know, I mean, match that you and I both feel is overrated now, but even at the time, it was better than that. So
yeah, I in 2004 it might have been the best. You mentioned the Chris's versus the two man power trip, which was a great match. And then of course the
and
ENC.
that was in 2001. So
Yeah, and then of course you had the classics with the TLC matches, and those three teams. But I would say after 2003, that was probably the best match that I can remember from that definitely from 2004.
right.
Maybe, well, 2005, you had that string of AJ matches.
Yes, yes, you do.
So I guess you're right. Yeah, 2004. But that, I mean, to me, that's the no-brainer best match of the decade.
Yeah, you know, I would say you know the TLC matches and that like you said the Jericho The
The
Jericho
Chris's
and
versus
yeah,
the
the Chris's
two-man
versus
power
two
trip.
man power trip. That those definitely deserve to have honorable mentions.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that you can't go wrong with America's Most Wanted versus Triple X.
No, and I mean Kendrick, London and Kendrick had some great matches too, but they didn't have them against any real opponents to elevate them. So it a lot of those two being a tag team was them head and shoulders above everybody else.
So you made me do 2000s first. So you get to cap it off in the 2000 in
Oh,
the
dude, this is
2010s, and we just talked about how hard that is.
it's so hard because I mean now we've got I want to look at the 80s as being the best tag division in history, but I think a lot of that was more because of the colorful tag teams and the quality of matches that they put on. But we've got such great tag teams now that go out there and put on great work, and then you've got probably three of the greatest ever in the last 5 years. With the Bucks, the Revival, um, and the Golden Lovers.
Fuck you.
Huh?
You didn't say the Briscoes, so fuck you.
Well, yeah, I mean the Briscoes are up there too, but I mean if they're I guess I don't know if I'd put them as greatest tag team. Like I can look at those other three tag teams and go, that's the top three tag teams of all time. No question. I can't even anybody that says to me something different, I can't make an argument for it. When you look
I
at
don't think the Golden Lovers have the resume to do that. When they're together, yes, they're fantastic, but they don't have that lengthy resume. They don't have the tag team title reigns.
you know you're
They don't have that stuff.
you're right about that. Well, neither do the Revival. But when you look at the quality of the work the Revival did in their short time was outstanding.
The Revival have been together since 2014. That's 6 straight years.
Yeah, but they spent four of those on the main roster.
N- Three ish, but still
Just getting
they were together that long. Whereas the Golden Lovers, weren't really together as a tag team that long consecutively.
that's you're right. That is true. They were more of a that'd be like saying Triple H and Steve Austin were the greatest tag team of all time.
Right, which you would have an argument for, no question,
Right.
but only like in a very brief. You'd have to look in a very narrow window of it.
Right. So yeah, I
That's
guess
kind of
you're
how I
right.
feel about Kurt Angle. Like people, Kurt Angle. A lot of people, were saying he was the greatest WWF wrestler of all time, and yet he had only wrestled for 6 years for the WWF. So
I don't say he's the greatest WWF wrestler of all time. I will say he's one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. But I don't think I would put him as the greatest WWF because he spent more time in TNA than he did in WWE.
yes, he did, absolutely.
So and he really became the greatest wrestler on the planet while he was with TNA. He was a great wrestler, but not the greatest on the planet. That he got once he was working for TNA. But anyway, 2000s, God, match.
2010s, not 2000s, 2010s.
2010s match. I
Well, if you really need help, let me list you off some contenders. In my
well,
opinion,
I don't need help. It's and I hate to say it, it might be recency bias, but I've got to go with the I don't know that I've ever felt the way about a match watching it like I did the Bucks versus Page and Omega.
that was this year though. That was 2020. That doesn't
That
count.
was 2020. Okay, then okay, well then that narrows it down. The last time I felt that great about a match was the Bucks versus the Golden Lovers
Okay,
in
that's fair.
New Japan.
And that match is definitely in my top six. But I'm also going to say um, the Bucks versus, um, and it's crazy because the Bucks are in almost every one of my matches in that time frame. That's how good. That's how damn good those guys are. That's why they're, in my opinion, the greatest tag team of all time.
Right.
But the Bucks against the Golden Lovers are there. The Bucks against the Briscoes from Final Battle 2017 is there.
Yeah.
The Bucks against the Lucha Brothers from All Out is there.
Yeah.
And then you have the Golden Lovers um,
Okada and Ishii.
versus Okada Nishi. But I have said repeatedly on our show that to me the greatest version of a TLC style match between multiple teams, not just two, between multiple teams, is from Final Battle 2019.
Oh,
when the Briscoes took on the Young Bucks, took on
and SCU.
SCU, and that is maybe my favorite all around tag team match of all time. And so that is why I've got to go with that one.
And we gotta. It's hard. I mean, those are our top two. But when the 2010s, especially the late 2010s, when you had Revival against American Alpha, it was just magic every time those two were together. Then you had the Revival against DIY, which was the same thing. They couldn't do anything wrong. The Usos went out there and put on incredible performances time and time again, no matter who they were in the ring with. But their matches against New Day were flat out astonishing at times. Some of their pay per view matches. And then one match that really, really stands out too is from Wrestle Kingdom 10. The Bucks, Red Dragon, uh, Roppongi, Vice, and who was the other team in that?
Was it Ricochet and Alex Shelley?
It was Ricochet, but I don't think it was Alex Shelley.
Okay.
But I mean, that was an outstanding match too, and so was the Wrestle Kingdom what 13, 12, when we discovered that the Young Bucks actually knew how to knew ring psychology and could tell a story against Roppongi 3K.
Yeah.
That was an
2012.
amazing
I think it was 12. Yeah.
that was an amazing match too. So I mean, and of course the Bucks are 99% of them, so it's hard not to say that they're the greatest.
It's also, we also would be remiss in not mentioning um, the incredible match from the first ever takeover Blackpool when
Oh,
um,
Mustache Mountain and
and the
Grizzled Young Veterans.
Grizzly Young Veterans. That was an outstanding tag match.
Yeah, it really
Um,
was.
and Mustache Mountain has had two great, phenomenal matches in 2019, also against Undisputed Era as well. So,
Well, and then in 2020 they had that great match against DIY.
but they did. But how amazing is it um, that 4 years ago when we were watching American Alpha take on the Revival, and then soon after that we were watching DIY take on all three, both of them, and then DIY versus the Revival, and then a four involving those guys and Authors of Pain. We thought we were living in a time where we would never see better tag team matches than those.
Yeah,
And and now I've got six that are above it.
and then along come the Bucks, who they were doing great work, but it was in 2000 whatever Wrestle Kingdom 12 was, so that would have been 2017,
2018, 2018.
2018. So it was like that Roppongi 3K match. That kind of it almost like it flipped a switch with them, where they went from greatest ever to no question greatest ever.
Right.
I mean, they had a solid resume before that, and they were starting to really. I mean, they were burning up the Ring of Honor and New Japan and everything for years before that, but there was something in that match where something just flipped with them, and they became no question. I can't even look at another team and say you're better than the Bucks.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's the thing is like you and I were debating in 2016, are the Bucks better, or the Revival better? And now there's no
Hmm.
question.
Yeah, and it's no fault of the Revival. They go out there, they do their work. It was the fact that the Bucks just flipped a switch. they
Well,
they flipped
and
a
well, they
switch, and
flipped a switch, and the Revival had a switch flipped on them.
yeah, but I mean the Bucks, they flipped a switch and they just went into an ungodly gear that nobody's ever heard of, and it's just every time they're out there, they're putting on great matches no matter who they're against.
That's absolutely fact. So, so there you have it. So my Mount Rushmore going by year is again the Andersons versus the Rock and Rolls from Starcade '87, I think it is. Um, the Hart Foundation versus Demolition, 2 out of 3 falls for SummerSlam 1990. Um, the Six Sides of Steel match between America's Most Wanted and Triple X. I don't remember the exact event it was at, but it was in 2004 for TNA. And then Final Battle 2019 when the Bucks took on the Briscoes, took on SCU in the greatest version of a TLC match of all time.
Yeah, and I mine are I can't, honest to God, can't pick a match between the Rockers or Midnight Rockers and Road Warriors. So you pick a match. It was the greatest match of the '80s. In '90s for me was New Age Outlaws versus Chainsaw Charlie and Cactus Jack. 2000s, of course, that Six Side to Steel Triple X versus AMW, and then um, the Bucks versus Golden Lovers.
Yeah, absolutely an outstanding match. If you guys have not seen any of those Bucks matches or Gold Lovers matches that we've talked about over the last um, 6 years, and another one I think I mentioned was 2018, the Bucks versus the Briscoes, where the Bucks do machine gun super kicks to finish off the Briscoes, and just one of the most amazing 2 minutes you'll ever see.
What was that?
Watch. Try to find those matches and watch them because they're absolutely outstanding tag matches.
Another match that kind of flew under the radar, mainly because it was probably a trios match, so we didn't really talk about it. But the Bucks and Kenny Omega on Ring of Honor against was it who were they against? Was it? It wasn't the Kingdom, was it?
No, it was Kushida. Trying to think who else. I think it was Kushida, Ishii, and one other person. But I can't remember who it was.
But I mean, that was another one that was just flat out amazing
Yeah.
from bell to bell. That was that Final Battle or was that?
No,
It,
that was it the anniversary show in 2017? I want to say.
they were the six-man tag team champions. So it was shortly after that belt was
Yeah.
debuted.
Right. No. Yeah. I don't remember the show. I know the match you're talking about. I know how much you and I gushed over it when we had our original show going on, but I can't
Right.
remember the event it was on.
I mean that at that time that was the best match I'd ever seen. Best tag match I'd ever seen. And I remember saying that, and maybe we forgot about it now because it was a six-man tag match, not a traditional tag match. But that's definitely one that if you get a chance to see it, guys, go see it. That was
Yeah.
an amazing match too.
Yeah, and if you guys certainly feel free to tweet us like, what do you feel the greatest tag matches of all time? What did we forget about doing this? Because Jeff and I did not plan to do this. We're going off the cuff here, and even so we know there's recency bias. We also know that there's matches that have probably slipped our minds. But that's really where we're at right now. It doesn't mean that we can't be dissuaded that we're wrong about this, but or that
Well, I can't. You are set in stone with your opinions.
that's because my opinions are what are called facts, Jeff.
Oh, okay. And if anybody can remember when that Bulldogs versus Islanders match that I was talking about, it was when the Islanders had kidnapped Matilda, and then they came out. They had an interview with holding up a like a bulldog chain with a little vest around it, and they were pretending they were petting this dog and feeding it snacks and everything before the match.
Yeah, and you know what? When I just recently watched Starcade, or not Starcade, but Survivor Series '87, they were talking about that. So it must have been like on a primetime wrestling right around there.
Okay, I don't know if it was primetime wrestling or if it was one of the like SummerSlam. I know they had a payoff at a pay-per-view, and that's the match.
SummerSlam wasn't until '88, so it couldn't have been there, and it wasn't at Royal Rumble '88 because I just watched that too. So
Maybe
I
it was '97 then, something in '97, maybe a Saturday Night's Main Event or something. All I know is I remember watching that
'97, Davey Boy Smith was dead in '97, wasn't he?
'87.
Oh,
Sorry,
okay, okay. And I
no, he was
exaggerated.
still
Yeah, I
alive in the
exaggerated.
2000s.
He was still alive.
No, but
but
it's
but
it's
but I,
one
but
of
I'm but
those.
I'm but I'm almost certain Dynamite Kid was in a wheelchair by then. So
It was one of those matches where I remember watching it, going, "Who the hell are these guys?" And I found out Haku and Tama, and then started watching them and how good they were. That was a very underrated tag team. Haku, it didn't last long because Haku ended up breaking apart and going off on his own, became king and all that stuff. But as a tag team, those two were very underrated together.
yeah, it's on WWF the Legacy Series, which there's Fridays, or no, like, I'm sorry, there's over the weekends here on LOP Radio and on YouTube. The uh, the guys there on that show have been talking about Haku, and they're talking about the Islanders versus Strike Force and things like that during that time frame. And Ms. Fan had also talked about how you know, because he was born in '88, so they're actually like covering the year where he was born in right
Oh,
now.
okay, cool.
And but he talked about like how he got caught up as a wrestling fan. He was like watching WWF and WCW in order, and he swears to God like he watched Haku in WWF, and a week later he watched him as Ming in WCW, and they look like totally different guys.
Yeah,
So
and they were like, and him as Ming in WCW is still one of the scariest things I've ever seen.
yeah, absolutely.
But
But I totally agree with him. His style as Ming was way different than his style as Haku.
oh, absolutely, yeah. As Haku, he was a completely different character. As Ming, he was one of the scariest humans I've ever seen walk the planet. But that's one of those tag teams where you look back now and you're like, man, those guys were underrated. They never really got the push that they probably deserved. But I mean, at the time, there was a Heart Foundation, there was a Bulldogs, there was Demolition, there was Strike Force, there was Power and Glory. There was how many other tag teams were there? Jesus Christ, there was a ton.
Yeah, you know the Islanders really, and I think right now would have been in the later stages of WWE, they would have been a lot more accomplished team than they ended up being in late '88 or
Yeah, I
late
mean,
'80s, I should say.
if they were around today, they'd be rivals with the Usos and be tearing down the house.
Absolutely, no question
So.
about that.
All right, guys. Well, if you're listening to us on YouTube, we appreciate it, regardless of which channel you're on. If you're on the Kingdom of Honor channel or if you're on Lords of Pain channel, hit the like button, hit the subscribe
And you
button.
know, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Jeff, but I'm but that's one thing that burns my ass about New Day being considered the greatest WWE tag team of all time. They live in the same fucking era as the Usos. Settle the fuck down.
Right? Exactly. Exactly. I, I've often thought that myself because there's no way that anybody in the last 10 years is better than the Usos.
In
Can
WWE, yes, I
in
agree.
WWE proper, and on. I mean, you can look at some NXT tag teams, but once they get up to the main roster, they're just not the same. And of course, there's tag teams everywhere else, but in WWE proper, since 2016, there's nobody better than the Usos.
Yeah, not the New Day, the Usos.
Right, exactly. I mean, I'll give the New Day a close second, but they're not the Usos.
Absolutely. Thank you.
But anyway, back to what I was saying. Either on our Kingdom of Honor YouTube channel or on the Lords of Pain YouTube channel, either one, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring the notification bell, and then do us a solid, head over to the other one and do the same thing. Hit the like button, ring the notification bell, and subscribe button so we can, when we come live, you don't miss a show. Especially on our Kingdom of Honor channel, we do every, we try to do it a couple times a month. We did one last night, which was reviewing one of the most awful movies Shane has ever made me watch. Uh, you can listen to that on our YouTube channel
Yes.
as we reviewed the Last Days of American Crime. That was on our YouTube channel, so head over there, give that a listen, give it a like, subscribe, notification bell, so on and so on. Also, if you also want to do us a solid, head over to our Patreon page, Patreon slash Kingdom of Honor. It is a great spot because you get access to all of our archives, everything that Shane and I have done. We talked about us gushing over that triple threat or that six-man tag match from 2016 and some other stuff that we talked about back then. You can hear all those archives in our archives at patreon.com/Kingdom of Honor. It's a small donation to help us keep this show going, and it really, really does help us out. And if you want to go high roller, you can listen to, or you can check out our exclusive pages. We do Patreon exclusive shows where we break down pay-per-views, we break down wrestlers' careers, we go kind of all in. Last night we took a look at it was Final Battle 2011. And the rise of Kevin Steen in Ring of Honor. So, and next,
Which is, I will say again for those of you who have not listened to it, the perfect wrestling pay per view.
yeah, it really was. And then, in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be doing, we're going to bring back our Desert Island series, solely for Patreon, and it's going to be a look at the career of Randy Savage. What we do is we each go through, we pick our four favorite matches. Like if we had to watch four matches by any one wrestler for the rest of time, these would be the four matches we would pick. In the past, we've done Chris Benoit, we've done Eddie Guerrero, we did Harley Race, and didn't we do another one too, or did we? Because we couldn't decide on matches for Shane Helms. We never did Shane
Rob
Helms, did
Van
we?
Dam. Did you say Rob Van
Oh,
Dam?
yep, we did Rob Van Dam as well. And in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be doing Randy Savage. So we're going to take a good long look. And the only place you can hear that is on our Patreon page, patreon.com/Kingdom of Honor in the exclusives tier. And then, of course, follow us on Twitter. And if you have any suggestions, let us know your favorite tag matches. Let us know how wrong Shane is. Any of that stuff. Use the hashtag DAD and the hashtag KOH. You can use those on Twitter, and you can find us by using those hashtags. I am at Regi Co-op, and he is at Zanman LOP. Everything I do, I put that hashtag on, and you can find us that way. So, great. I'm all done.
Um, yeah. One thing we didn't talk about, and maybe you don't even know yet, Jeff. But New Japan is coming back, my friends.
Yep, I saw that.
June 15th, so a week from yesterday, New Japan is back, and then the next day, a week from today, the New Japan Cup starts, and then on July 12th, so only about a month after it was originally scheduled, we've got my favorite NJPW event most
Dominion.
years, Dominion Osaka
Nice.
Joe Hall. So we're gonna be back to covering some real NJPW stuff very shortly.
Well, what are we going to do next week? Actually, I got an idea.
What's
Since I
that?
kind of soured on TNA, how about we go back and pick a pay-per-view from '02 Ring of Honor?
Well, do you want to watch the Era of Honor begins? Have you
I
ever
was
seen it?
actually
Go
I
ahead.
haven't seen anything from before 2006 in Ring of Honor. So,
Okay.
yeah, let's give that a go.
That's their. I mean, obviously by the title, but just so
Yeah.
those who don't know, it's the very first show Ring of Honor ever did. So
Yep. Let's take a look at that for next week, and maybe if and maybe do some more Mount Rushmore stuff. I mean, we can always think of a category and just throw some greatest ever.
yeah, we got like 45 minutes out of it tonight. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. So and tomorrow night we'll be back with you with Dynamite After Dark. Right after Dynamite goes off the air on TNT. On Thursday is MCLP Radio Adventure, which I'll show you talking about the wonderful takeover that happened this past Sunday. Um, on and then I guess this coming weekend is WWF The Legacy Series, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they're now up to WrestleMania 4. So
And guys, my oldest son is up here for a week. He hasn't been up here for a while, and he was a WWF fan through and through, who really got his heart ripped out by how bad they've been. Kind of swore off wrestling. So I've been kind of slowly getting him back into it over the last week, and tomorrow is going to be his first taste of AEW Dynamite. So let's hope that AEW puts on a stellar show, and I might have some decent instant reactions while we're watch or on tomorrow night's show. So
we didn't talk about that last night. Did he watch Final Battle with you?
he watched kind of a little bit. He was watching some of it with me, yeah, but he also had a few things that he had to get done. The
Okay.
little bit that he did, and that's what I said. I'm getting him back into wrestling. I'm trying to get him into stuff other than WWE.
Yeah. Well, when you say getting him into wrestling, I assume that you're not talking about WWE. So
Well, most people would that know me anyway. But yeah, he did watch a little bit of it. He watched some of the Roddy Strong Chris Hero match, which he really liked, and he watched a little bit of the Briscoes WGTT.
yeah, yeah. No. Truth to the rumor that Roddy Strong had to have his head sewn back on after that match.
Oh, yeah, he's having a hell of a run. I mean, we'll see what NJPW can do after they're back live, and maybe we got because I know at the beginning of the year I had Hiromu Takahashi and Will Ospreay as two of my top five.
Yeah.
Then
Well,
we had
might as he
then we
rematch
had
those two. Who knows?
then we had to go start watching greatness from Roddy Strong and AJ Styles to kind of ruin my feelings on it all. But
All right. Well, we'll see you guys tomorrow night for Dynamite After Dark. Until then, it's Zan saying long days, pleasant nights, and Jeff saying
Goodbye.